absolutely heartbroken, Kay, as I know you are. I've been watching the coverage unfold, and as you may know, I was there myself in March this year in my capacity as a doctor. We were training other doctors who were fearing the worst. They were fearing that they didn't know how to manage mass casualty triage of the sort of scale that we're now seeing. They were worried about their hospitals and workplaces being bombed. And we saw firsthand, after being in a bunker ourselves, we saw firsthand just what they were doing to other medics, what they were doing to civilians. And we also met families that showed us that there is nothing that Russia wouldn't do to gain power, and to see hospitals targeted, mass graves. It is beggars belief that this is happening, and I think we're all absolutely heartbroken.
What was the mood like when you were there?
Everyone was so frightened, Kay. We had doctors that we were training. We trained 250 doctors who were in tears, saying, I'm an eye specialist, I'm a psychiatrist, I don't know what I'm going to do with all of the dead bodies. They were fearing chemical weapons attacks because they were seeing what was happening in the Syrian playbook playing out. So people being held hostage in hospitals and in areas, then starved of food, and then brought to the surface of where they were hiding in order to search for food, and then the potential of chemical weapons attacks. So there was a deep fear, a deep distress, and a deep sense of, how has this happened?
I know that you have, one of the reasons you want to come and talk to us today is about the rising concerns about mental health here in the UK. Yes. And when we see these images, of course, and we worry about the people who basically live in Europe and they're having to live under these conditions, it must have an impact on people here.
It does. We're all human, aren't we? We all watch those images and we think about our own children. We think about our own families, and while there, myself and my medical team actually rescued a family who had been shot at close range, and the children had had bits of their body parts blown up. Their grandmother had been murdered before their very eyes, and we rescued them and took them to Poland. My mum's Polish. Their mother that was shot was just like my mother. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And the British people are so wonderful, so kind-hearted, so open-hearted, and what they've done to support Ukrainians and open their homes has been amazing. But just to watch it play out, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't feel a sense of deep distress. And yes, it will be having an impact on people's mental health, along with everything else that they're having to deal with.
Another concern a lot of people have is the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
We're hearing from the government they still haven't decided whether benefits will increase with inflation or not.
It absolutely has to. Like, benefits have to increase with inflation. We shouldn't see those on the lowest incomes and those with disabilities worse off. But, Kay, I still work on the NHS front line.
I know you do.
And in A&E, we see people who have attempted to take their own lives, with the reason being, Doctor, I don't know how to feed my family. I don't know how to heat my home. We're seeing toddlers coming in with burns, and we're not even in deep winter yet, Kay. We're seeing people coming in with burns because they have used old electric heaters. We're seeing, toddlers coming in with burns from burst water bottles because their parents don't know how to heat the house and they're using old water bottles, taking them to bed with them, and they burst. This is the reality, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, and something has to be done. And while the government are sort of playing games and are in all this sort of turmoil, Grant Shapps wants to be caretaker Prime Minister, Boris Johnson is planning his comeback, Nadine Dorries is calling for a general election. People are really struggling. The people that we see in our constituency surgeries, the people that I see in my hospital, they want to know why their child, who has been in a mental health crisis for 79 hours, is still in A&E. They want to know why their referral, 1 million adults have been referred for mental health treatment, that has been closed. They haven't even had the support. And it's costing the economy £117 billion. And people are really struggling. And it's not a game, it's real life. People are choosing between heating and eating.
Nicola Sturgeon she's at her SNP conference in Aberdeen. She says that she detests the Tories and everything they stand for. Do you?
I don't detest anybody. What I do think is we have an omni-shambles of a government.
But what do you think about that terminology, that wording? Doesn't help, does it? It's
not wording that I would choose to use. I think she should be focusing on on her broken health services, on the attainment gap in Scotland, on the fact that there are more children now plunged into poverty than ever. I think she should be focusing her conference speech on that rather than using that sort of terminology. And I think ultimately the Scottish people deserve better than Nicola Sturgeon.
Should Conor Burns get a knighthood?
There has to be an absolute full investigation into what's happened, and he should not receive a knighthood until the outcome of that is very clear.
And Tom Watson, should he receive one?
He's not up for a knighthood, he's up for a peerage.
Forgive me, a peerage, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, should he get that then?
I think he should. I had the honour of having him as my boss, actually, for 3 years while I was the Shadow Minister for Sport. He was really good to work with, he was very supportive, and ultimately it's very common for MPs to end up in the House of Lords. Many MPs who...
But it's not without controversy, as you know. I mean, suggestions that he's insulting the families of those that were caught up in an investigation where one person had committed suicide because they felt that they couldn't cope with the allegations against them, which were proved unfounded. Lady Britain says absolutely under no circumstances should this go ahead. Why do you think otherwise?
I think you'd have to ask Tom Watson the details of everything that's happened.
Yeah, but I'm asking you what you think. I mean, he would be a Labour peer, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he'd be a Labour peer. I personally think that Keir has made a decision as to who gets a peerage. He's chosen Tom Watson for very good reasons, and I think that it's right that Tom does go to the Lords, but on the details of everything, you'd have to speak to Tom about that.
It's good to talk to you, as always. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.